Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's case, we're going to be discussing the tragedy of Curtisha Morning. Unfortunately, it was at the hands of her best friend, and yeah, we're going to jump right into it. If you're new to my channel, my name is Alexis and I have always loved true crime. I wanted to give a voice to those who don't have one, so here we are. If you haven't checked out my last video, I'm gonna have it linked below. Just so you guys know, I am looking down at my notes and I just want to make sure I give the most accurate information that I can, so thank you for understanding that in advance. So without further ado, let's get into the background of Curtisha. Curtisha Morning was born May 19th, 1977. She was the daughter of Viola Morning and the sister of Patrina Morning. And in documentaries that I was watching, they refer to her as Trina, so I may call her Trina in the future in this video. They all grew up in a tight-knit community in Riverhead, New York. She was smart, beautiful, and popular. Trina even described her sister as looking like a bronze doll. Okay. That just sounds statuesque and just really pretty in nature. Due to her involvement in extracurricular activities, Curtisha was very popular amongst different social groups within Riverhead High School. She even gained the title of homecoming queen. She was loyal to her friends and highly fashionable. One of her closest friends was KALILA Taylor. KALILA Taylor was born March 3rd, 1977. She and her family were close to Curtisha's family. Their mothers actually went to the same school, so they grew up together. And from the time Curtisha and KALILA were little teeter-totters, these families were holding gatherings together, like just different events and celebrations. Despite having a young son to care for, KALILA kept her eyes on the prize and she graduated in May of 1995. She was also popular. She was voted Best Smile and Best Dressed in her class yearbook. She was a part of the school step team, and every Sunday you could find her singing in the church choir. Both Curtisha and KALILA came from hard-working families, and this was one of the reasons they connected so well. They understood the value of hard work. In early 1996, Curtisha caught the attention of a local bad boy, Carl Brown. He was well known around Riverhead, and he was just a few years older than Curtisha. She did find him handsome, but he was after her for the wrong reasons. Like, he was trying to do the nasty, pretty much. And she just wasn't about that life. She had made a vow to stay celibate till marriage, so that's understandable, and he couldn't really respect those values. She knew they were clearly headed down different paths, and she wanted to stay focused, so she decided to end things with Carl. Now, as I mentioned before, Curtisha was smart. She wanted to be a doctor, and one way she tried to leverage her career was by attending classes at the BOCES Center. Classes at the BOCES Center would help her obtain her nursing aid certificate. She was a dreamer and believed anything was possible, but she knew college wasn't cheap. So one way she considered paying for it was by joining the Army. After all, the Army did offer her a scholarship. They would provide her a free education, and if she completed college, she would go into the Army as an officer. You could definitely say she was a focused and determined young woman. But unfortunately, these dreams were never going to happen for her. On February 29th, 1996, it was a cold, restless night for Viola Morning. She hadn't returned from school the previous day, and this just raised a lot of red flags for Viola and Trina. They tried to get in contact with Curtisha's closest friends, but KALILA couldn't be reached, and it seemed like no one else just knew where Curtisha was. At first, police thought maybe she was a runaway, but after they learned her clean track record of being a great student and having a bright future, they ruled this out quickly. On the same day Curtisha went missing, her backpack and nursing uniform were found near the school's track field, but she was nowhere to be seen. Police and family members put up missing person signs, And the family also held a rally to raise awareness about Curtisha. The news scared Riverhead locals, and this case caught the attention of the media. A search was conducted, and it included police, members of the community, and dogs to help recover Curtisha. The area was searched 3 times, but sadly, it ended only 5 days after the items were first discovered. When finally contacted, KALILA came to have no idea where Curtisha was. Her mom advised her to be careful because she was being watched. Many tips rolled into the police station. People were claiming they saw Curtisha, but all these sightings were proven to be false. Early on March 25th, 1996, a babysitter was watching 2 young boys near the track and field of Riverhead High School. When she looked over, she saw what looked like was a leather jacket off in the woods. So when she went to pick it up, she realized it was an actual person, and this person was covered in more than 90 stab wounds. That person was the body of Curtisha Morning. One of Curtisha's earrings was found on the ground, indicating there was possibly a struggle and it might have fallen out or been yanked out. About 2 feet away from Curtisha's body was this necklace, and it had blood on it. Now, you might think it would be her blood, but obviously no one could tell right away. Keep that in mind because this necklace plays a very important part in this story. It was believed that her body wasn't discovered sooner because of the snow from that winter. It was February in New York, so they believe that no one could pick up on it from the layers of snow. Another thing that was kind of crazy when I was researching this is those dogs were trained to search for alive bodies, and that's another reason why her body was discovered a little later. At least that's what the police believe. Now, Curtisha was clothed when she was discovered, but detectives didn't rule out a sexual motive. Remember, she did recently break things off with Carl Brown. Apparently, for Valentine's Day that year, he tried to make this grand gesture and profess his love to her in front of some of her peers, and she didn't like that, and she just kind of denied him in front of everyone. So I can imagine for Carl that this was embarrassing, right? Detectives had reason to believe his anger could have caused him to attack her. When he was called in for questioning, he said he could never inflict that type of harm on a person. According to witnesses, Curtisha was seen on February 29th around 10:30 that morning, which would have been around the time when she was heading to another class. So police asked Carl where he was on that day, and he said he was at home alone. Police, they can't really prove that as his alibi, but they also couldn't arrest him. So the search continued to find out who Curtisha's killer was. During his interview with police, Carl did say that he had a jealous ex-girlfriend and she was extremely possessive over him, so they needed to consider KALILA. Remember KALILA, her best friend? Yeah, KALILA and Carl dated. Carl was actually the ex-boyfriend and father to KALILA's son. KALILA and Carl dated off and on for years, and they eventually moved in together. But after a few weeks of living together, they got into a huge fight, and it ultimately caused them to split. And only 2 weeks later is when Carl started trying to claim his love for Curtisha. That's when he got an interest in her, and he said that KALILA hated that. During the time that Carl was dating Curtisha, he said that there was a time when the two of them were at a party and KALILA showed up at this party and just started going off on them. And this took place about 4 days before Curtisha went missing. So there was definitely a reason for concern and to look in the direction of KALILA. KALILA was contacted to answer questions at the police station. She said on the morning Curtisha went missing, she was working at her fast food restaurant job. Detectives were able to look into this alibi because normally when a person works a job like that, you have to clock in and clock out for your shift. Well, it turns out KALILA was scheduled to work that day at noon, but she was actually late, so it was likely that she could have talked to Curtisha that morning. The 3 witnesses that saw Curtisha that day said that Curtisha was arguing with a woman that looked like KALILA, and they identified her by looking at her yearbook photo. They were like, yeah, that's the girl. Even though KALILA denied this, the police noticed that she has small wounds on her hands that were healing, like they probably had been a few weeks old. And they asked her about this, but she couldn't really explain where they came from. Due to all the inconsistencies that KALILA was presenting them, they asked her if she recognized this necklace, and she said she did. She claimed that the necklace was given to her by Carl when they were dating, and she gave it back to him. This turned out to be false. They did look into it, and yeah, it was a lie. When detectives were looking into KALILA's file, they discovered that she actually was no stranger to crime. She was the assailant in multiple crimes starting in 1992 and lasting all the way up to 1997. Detectives discovered she was a victim in an incident that happened October of 1995. So just a few months before Curtisha went missing. In the file they discovered of KALILA, there were pictures of KALILA actually wearing the necklace that was at the crime scene next to Curtisha's body. They sent this necklace off to a gemologist, and he confirmed that even the damages made in the necklace resembled, like identically resembled, the one that was found at this crime scene. This was considered circumstantial evidence though, and they needed definitive evidence. So they actually sent this necklace off to DNA testing, and yeah, it actually took almost a year, if not a little over a year, to get the DNA results back. When they got the DNA results, it turns out that KALILA's blood was mixed in with Curtisha's, and some of KALILA's DNA was on Curtisha's clothes. With this new evidence, they were able to make an arrest on KALILA. Now, KALILA was very close friends with Curtisha, so she likely knew Curtisha's schedule. And on the day Curtisha disappeared, she was supposed to give a speech at the BOCE Center at an orientation for students that were interested in this nursing program. And that's where she was before she went missing. Investigators believe that KALILA knew Curtisha was going to be leaving the BOCE Center around this time and went and attacked Curtisha afterwards. And because it was an attack, Curtisha most likely ran, and that's why she wasn't right on the school property, but like close by the track and field, and that's why her body was where it was found. So KALILA's trial started August 25th, 1999. There were supporters for both KALILA and Curtisha. It was devastating to see the two close families that once partied together now just have to come together 3 years after this horrific incident. The defense tried to argue that KALILA was framed for murder. They believed the homicide didn't take place the day Curtisha went missing, but that she was abducted and then her body was later placed in the woods. KALILA even tried to claim that police planted her jewelry there to frame her. This was just crazy. Ultimately, KALILA was sentenced to 25 years to life for second-degree murder. In 2004, KALILA's conviction was overturned by the Court of Appeals. Apparently, the jury was misled into believing that the evidence presented was definitive, but indeed it was circumstantial. And this just devastated Curtisha's family. And you know, if I was her loved one, I would be upset too, because it's like, well, we thought we had justice, but we don't. And that's how her family felt. It was terrible. Prior to the retrial, KALILA spent years being treated and medicated at a psychiatric facility because she was making such outrageous claims Her claims were so outrageous that a psychiatrist deemed her to have a psychotic disorder, and that's why she was getting this treatment all this time. When her conviction was overturned, she was offered a plea deal of 18 years. KALILA's attorney and family encouraged her to take this plea deal, especially since if they did a retrial, it would put Curtisha's family back in that position of having to watch and listen to this case of their loved one, their daughter, their sister, going missing and dying, essentially. KALILA didn't care. She wanted to go to court. The retrial started on June 11, 2012, when KALILA was 35 years old. Curtisha's family actually had to fly in for this retrial. The loss of Curtisha was so devastating that they relocated to North Carolina to not be reminded of the incident. Even though 16 years had passed since the tragedy, her mother said the wound felt just as fresh, and all she wanted was justice for Curtisha. I'm going to spare you the details of the retrial because most of it was KALILA making crazy accusations and her family defending her. So fortunately, in August of 2012, KALILA was sentenced to 25 years to life for murdering her best friend. It only took 3 hours for the jury to reach this verdict. District Attorney Thomas Spoda said, quote, "It is our hope this second conviction will provide the mourning family with some measure of peace and closure," unquote. Viola was relieved when KALILA was found guilty again. She said it was devastating to learn that her daughter grew up with a killer, but the family could finally move on and heal from this tragedy. KALILA was eligible for parole as of May 2022. I unfortunately couldn't find a lot of details on this. I couldn't find out if she actually applied or anything like that, and I do apologize for not being able to find that, but I am going to be on the lookout, and if something does pop up, I'll put it in a pinned comment in the future if I get more information. But I want to thank you all so much for listening to this sad story of Curtisha Morning. She was well loved and respected by her community, and all she wanted was to fulfill her dreams and heal others along the way. No one deserves this type of harm. I just want to remind you all to stay safe. Be aware of your surroundings. And until next time, I'll see you guys around. I'm Alexis, and peace out.